The massive Zephyrian colony ship, Gentle Current, hung like a dying whale in the deadly Kepler 442 asteroid field. Its once bright hull was now a patchwork of scars and emergency repairs. Deep inside the ship, 50,000 alien families huddled together as their world slowly died around them. Captain Veltar stood on the bridge, his forearms shaking as alarms blared from every console. The life support systems were failing one by one. Oxygen levels dropping, temperature falling. The artificial gravity flickered on and off, making the children cry and the elderly gasp for breath. Through the viewports, massive asteroids tumbled, past like floating mountains. Some were the size of cities, others bigger than moons. They spun and crashed into each other in a deadly dance that had been going on for millions of years. No ship had ever survived crossing this field. It was known across the galaxy as the graveyard for good reason, but that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the two burning stars at the center of the system. They pulled at each other in an endless cosmic dance, and now they were pulling the Gentle Current toward them too. The ship's engines were completely dead. There was no way to escape the slowly tightening gravity well. Veltar knew they had maybe 3 days before the stars would tear their ship apart. With trembling hands, he activated the emergency beacon. The message would travel faster than light, reaching dozens of star systems in minutes. Maybe someone would hear. Maybe someone would care enough to try. "This is Zephyrian Colony Transport. Gentle Current requesting immediate assistance." He spoke into the transmitter. "We have 50,000 civilians aboard, including 10,000 children. Our engines are completely dead, and we're being pulled toward the binary stars. We estimate 72 hours before hull breach." The message shot out into space, carrying with it the hopes and fears of an entire civilization. Across 17 different star systems, various alien species received the distress call. The wise Etherians calculated the risks and shook their heads sadly. The proud Centaurians marked it as an acceptable loss. The logical synthetics ran probability calculations and determined rescue was impossible. The peaceful Aquarians sent prayers but no ships. Every species in the galaxy knew the same terrible truth. The asteroid field was a death trap. Even if you could somehow navigate through the floating mountains of rock and metal, you'd never make it back out alive. It would take months to plan a safe rescue mission, and the Zephyrians only had days. But in the outer rim of the galaxy, aboard a human space station, someone heard that message very differently. Admiral Jin was having his morning coffee when the distress signal reached the Terran defense station. The hot liquid was still burning his tongue when he heard the words that would change everything. 50,000 civilians in 72 hours. He set down his cup and looked at the tactical display. The Kepler 442 system glowed red on the screen, marked with warning symbols that made most spacers turn away. The asteroid field looked like a maze of death, thousands of spinning rocks, each one capable of crushing a battleship. "Commander Wu, what's the status on rescue operations?" Jin asked. Wu, a young officer with tired eyes, shook her head. "Sir, we've been monitoring alien communication channels. The Etherian Council sent their sympathies. The Centaurian Empire called it a regrettable incident. The Synthetic Collective calculated a 0.3% chance of successful rescue." Jin's jaw clenched. "What about actual rescue ships?" "None launched, sir. The Aquarians are sending supply ships, but they estimate arrival in 12 weeks. Everyone else is, well, they're calling it impossible." Around the bridge, other human officers had stopped what they were doing. They all knew what those words meant. Somewhere out there, 50,000 people were dying slowly, and the galaxy had already written them off. Jin stood up from his command chair. "All ships, prepare for immediate departure." The bridge fell silent. Commander Wu blinked in surprise. "Sir, the other species have calculated a 3-month minimum for safe passage through that field. Our own computers show, then we'd better hurry." Jin cut her off. His voice was calm but still. How many ships do we have ready? 12 vessels, sir, but launch them all. Jin turned to the communications officer. Send word to every ship captain. We're going into the graveyard, and we're bringing everyone home. Within minutes, alarms were ringing throughout the station. Crews who had been sleeping were pulling on their uniforms. Engineers were running final checks on engines and life support systems. Pilots were downloading navigation data for a route that their computers marked as suicidal. In the docking bays, 12 human ships came alive with light and power. These weren't the sleek, careful vessels that other species flew. These were tough, ugly ships built by a species that had crawled out of a gravity well that killed most visitors. Ships designed by people who thought impossible was just another word for challenging. 6 hours after receiving the distress call, while other species were still forming committees to discuss the tragedy, the human fleet was already burning. Hard toward Kepler 442. Their crews suited up for EVA work, checked their radiation gear, and prepared for the impossible, because that's what humans did. Captain Veltar was watching the life support readings drop when his communications officer suddenly straightened up. Sir, we're getting multiple contacts on long-range sensors. 12 ships approaching fast. Impossible, Veltar muttered. No one would be crazy enough to come here. But there they were on the screen, 12 blips moving toward them at a speed that made Veltar's blood run cold. They were coming in hot, way too fast for the asteroid field. At that velocity, they'd smash into the first rock they encountered. Unknown vessels. This is Captain Veltar of the Zephyrian Colony Transport, he transmitted urgently. Your approach vector is ... inadvisable. The asteroid density in this region will destroy your ships. Please reduce speed immediately. The response came back in a language his computer had to work hard to translate. The voice was calm, almost casual. We see it, Captain. This is Captain Na, of the Earth vessel Iron Wolf. Permission to begin rescue operations. Veltar's 4 eyes widened as he watched his tactical display. The human ships had reached the outer edge of the asteroid field, and they weren't slowing down. Instead, they were doing something that defied every law of safe navigation he knew. They were splitting up. The lead ship dove under a massive spinning asteroid the size of a small moon. The second ship rolled sideways and shot through a gap so narrow that Veltar's computer couldn't even measure it. The third ship actually used another asteroid as a slingshot, bouncing off its gravity well to gain speed. How are they doing that? Whispered his navigator, a young Zephyrian who had trained at the galaxy's best flight academy. Veltar couldn't answer. He was watching 12 human ships dance through the deadliest obstacle course in known space like they were at a peaceful parade. They moved with a fluid grace that reminded him of the great space whales of his homeworld, powerful, confident, and completely unafraid. One ship passed so close to a spinning asteroid that its hull should have been scraped away. Instead, the human pilot seemed to time it perfectly, sliding through just as the asteroid's rotation created a tiny window of safety. Captain, his communications officer called out. They're requesting permission to dock. Veltar realized his mouth was hanging open. Granted, he whispered, still staring at the impossible sight. But how are you managing to navigate through this field? Captain Na's voice came back, and Veltar could hear the smile in it. Just what we do, sir. Hang tight. We'll have you out of here in no time. Outside, the human ships continued their deadly ballet through space, making the impossible look easy. Lieutenant Han's face filled the main view screen of the gentle current, and Captain Veltar immediately noticed something strange about this. Human, he was smiling, actually smiling while floating in the middle of the deadliest space hazard in the galaxy. All right, Captain, here's the plan, Han said cheerfully, pulling up a holographic display. We're going to use controlled explosions to break up the bigger asteroids blocking your escape route. Then we'll manually pilot our shuttles through. the debris field to evacuate your people. Our EVA teams will work outside to repair your engines while we're doing all this." Veltar's translator made strange clicking noises as it tried to process the human words. "You want to do what?" he finally managed to say. Han pointed at the display with the casual attitude of someone discussing lunch plans. "See, we've got these mining charges that'll crack the big rocks into smaller pieces. My buddy John over there is going to fly right up to them and plant the explosives by hand. Then boom, instant highway." "That's completely insane," Veltar's engineer whispered. "The blast radius alone would vaporize any ship within 50 kilometers. Which is why we'll be about 49 kilometers away when they blow." Han laughed. "Don't worry, we've done this before. Well, not exactly this, but close enough." Veltar felt all four of his hearts skip a beat. And the radiation from our damaged reactor. It would kill any organic being in minutes. "Yeah, we noticed that on our scans," Han said, checking a device on his wrist. "Pretty spicy out there. Good thing we brought the heavy-duty suits. Our guys can work in that for a few hours before they start glowing." Before Veltar could protest further, Han was already turning away. "Gotta run, Captain. The cavalry's launching now." Through the viewports, Veltar watched in horror and amazement as human shuttles began pouring out of their ships. These small craft moved like insects through the asteroid field, darting between rocks that would crush them instantly if they made one wrong move. Over the comm channels, he could hear the human pilots talking to each other like they were taking a pleasant drive through the countryside. "Hey Min, nice barrel roll around that rock. Thanks. Did you see how close Tay got to that spinning asteroid? Show off. I'm just saying, if we're going to die today, might as well look good doing it." They were joking. Actually joking, while performing maneuvers that would be impossible for the best Cephrean pilots. "That's suicide," Veltar called out desperately. Han's voice came back one more time, casual as ever. "Nah, that's Tuesday. We've got this, Captain. Trust us." Pilot Chen's shuttle Lucky Strike twisted through space like a leaf in a hurricane, threading between two asteroids, each the size of a mountain. His passenger compartment was packed with 30 Zephyrian children, their large eyes wide with terror and wonder as they watched the deadly rocks spin past the view. "Don't look so worried, kids," John called back to them in broken Zephyrian. "This is the fun part." His shuttle rolled sideways to avoid a chunk of debris, then dove under a massive boulder that would have flattened them like a bug. The children made small squeaking noises, but John was whistling an old Earth tune as he worked the controls. Over the comm, his wingman Tay was actually humming while his own shuttle performed impossible spirals around a cluster of spinning rocks. "Another load coming through," John called cheerfully to the fleet, as if he wasn't performing miracles every second. "Copy that, John," came the reply from Commander Wu aboard the command ship. "That makes load number 47. Keep it up." Back on the gentle current, Captain Veltar watched the human operations with growing amazement. These creatures had been working non-stop for 18 hours straight. Their radiation detectors should have been screaming warnings, but the humans just kept going. Through his view screen, he could see human EVA teams crawling across his ship's hull like metal spiders. They were working in radiation levels that would cook a Zephyrian in minutes, but they moved with calm efficiency, welding new hull plates and rerouting power systems. "How long can they keep this up?" asked his medical officer, watching the humans work. "I don't think they know how to stop," Veltar replied. Shuttle after shuttle made the impossible journey from the colony ship to the human vessels. Each trip should have been a death sentence, but the human pilots made it look like a routine commute. They carried the sick, the elderly, pregnant mothers, and frightened children. Each group was treated with the same casual heroism. Pilot Min's shuttle took a hit from a small asteroid that punched a hole in her wing, but she just laughed it off. "Adds character," she told flight control as she continued her evacuation run with sparks flying from her damaged craft. As the hours passed, the impossible became routine. Human crews rotated in and out of the radiation zones, taking doses that would be lethal to most species. When their shift ended, they would grab a quick meal and some coffee, then go right back out again. The Zephyrians stopped counting after the 100th successful shuttle run. These humans treated death-defying heroics like it was just another day at the office. Commander Mi's face went pale as she stared at her sensor readings. The numbers kept getting worse, and there was no way to make them better. Admiral Jin, the colony ship's orbit is decaying, she shouted across the bridge. They're falling toward the binary stars faster than we calculated. Admiral Jin looked up from the tactical display where he'd been tracking the evacuation progress. Red warning lights were flashing all over the screen. The gentle current was caught in what spacers called a death spiral, slowly being pulled toward the 2 burning stars at the center of the system. "How long do we have?" Jin asked, his voice steady, despite the crisis. "At this rate, maybe 6 hours, before the gravitational forces tear the ship apart," Mi replied, her fingers flying over her controls. "The binary stars are pulling them in like a whirlpool." Around the bridge, the human crew exchanged grim looks. 6 hours wasn't enough time to evacuate 50,000 people, not even close. And if they tried to attach tow cables to pull the massive colony ship free, the gravitational stress would rip both vessels to pieces. Jin studied the tactical display, his mind racing through possibilities. Every computer simulation showed the same result. Attempting to rescue the gentle current would destroy the entire human fleet. The math was simple and brutal. "Sir," said his navigation officer quietly, "maybe we should focus on getting the people we've already evacuated to safety. We could save maybe 20,000. "No." Jin's voice cut through the bridge like a blade. "All ships, prepare for coordinated burn. We're going to slingshot them out." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew what he was suggesting. It was beyond dangerous. It was physics-defying madness. "Sir, the gravitational stress will tear us apart," Commander Mi said desperately. "Our hulls can't take that kind of punishment." "The computers show. Then we'd better hold together," Jin interrupted, his voice like steel. He turned to face his crew, and they saw something in his eyes that made them understand. "No one gets left behind. Not on my watch." He activated the fleet-wide comm channel. "All ships, this is Admiral Jin. We're going to attempt a coordinated gravitational slingshot to pull the colony ship free. I won't lie to you, this could kill us all. But there are 50,000 innocent people counting on us across the fleet." Human crews began preparing for the impossible once again. The destroyer Defiant groaned like a wounded animal as the binary stars pulled at her hull with invisible hands. Captain Lee felt the deck plates buckling under her feet as gravitational forces that could crush planets slowly tore her ship apart. "Hull breach on deck 7. Shouted her engineering officer over the screaming alarms. "We're losing atmosphere fast." Lee gripped her command chair as another shudder ran through the ship. Around her, sparks flew from overloaded consoles, and the lights flickered on and off. Through the viewports, she could see the other human ships, struggling just as hard. Their hulls stretched to the breaking point as they tried to pull the massive Zephyrian colony ship free from the gravity well. "Captain, our main engines are about to go critical," reported her chief engineer. His voice was calm, despite the fact that his console was on fire. "We've got maybe 5 minutes before total power failure." Lee looked at the tactical display. The gentle current was so close to escaping, so close. But without the Defiant's engines helping to pull, the colony ship would fall back toward the stars. 50,000 people would die. She made her decision. Defiant. "To fleet," Lee announced over the comm channel. "We're going to redirect all remaining power to boost the colony ship's escape velocity." Admiral Jin's voice crackled back immediately, filled with static from the electromagnetic storms raging around them. "Lee, that's a death sentence." Your ship can't survive without engine power in this gravity well. Lee smiled sadly as she looked around at her crew. 37 good people who had followed her into hell without question. They were all looking at her now, and she saw understanding in their eyes. They knew what this meant. That's an order, sir, Lee said firmly. These people are going home. Her crew didn't argue. They didn't panic. Instead, her navigator started humming an old Earth song, something about going home to see the mountains again. One by one, the other crew members joined in, their voices mixing together in a harmony that somehow cut through the noise of alarms and breaking metal. The Defiant gave everything she had. Every last erg of power from her dying engines was channeled into one final push. The colony ship shot forward like a cork from a bottle, finally breaking free from the gravity well as her ship came apart. Around her, Captain Lee kept singing with her crew, knowing that 50,000 people would see another sunrise because of what they did today. 3 hours later, in the safety of open space, the surviving human fleet finally allowed themselves to breathe. The deadly asteroid field was now just a distant glow behind them, and the binary stars were no longer pulling at their ships with hungry gravity. The gentle current floated peacefully among the human vessels, her hull scarred but intact. All around her, smaller human ships buzzed like protective bees, their crews still running final checks and making sure everyone was truly safe. On the bridge of the colony ship, Captain Veltar stared at the numbers on his screen and couldn't quite believe them. 50,000 civilians, all alive, all safe. Not a single soul lost during the impossible rescue. Captain, his communications officer called out, her voice thick with emotion. Admiral Jin is requesting permission to come aboard. When the human admiral stepped onto the Zephyrian bridge, Veltar was struck by how ordinary he looked. No fancy uniform, no medals gleaming on his chest. Just a tired man in a practical jumpsuit, with dark circles under his eyes and grease stains on his hands from helping with repairs dot around the bridge. Zephyrian crew members were openly weeping tears of gratitude. Some dropped to their knees in the traditional gesture of life debt. Others simply stared at Jin like he was some kind of miracle. Admiral Jin, Veltar began, his voice shaking. How can we ever repay you? You've saved our entire civilization, our children, our elders, our future. Jin rubbed his tired eyes and gave a small smile. Got any good coffee? My crew hasn't slept in 48 hours. Veltar blinked in confusion. Coffee, Admiral, you don't understand. Our entire territory, our technology, our trade routes, everything we have is yours. Name any price. Coffee's fine, Captain, Jin said with a shrug. Just neighbors helping neighbors. The bridge fell silent. The Zephyrians looked at each other in amazement. Here was a species that had just performed the impossible, lost one of their own ships in the process, and all they wanted was a hot drink. We have something called Calaroot brew, Veltar offered hesitantly. It's similar to your coffee. Jin's face lit up for the first time since the rescue began. Perfect. And maybe some food if you've got it. Saving people works up an appetite. In that moment, the Zephyrians understood they had encountered something truly rare in the galaxy. A species that measured wealth, not in territory or technology, but in lives saved and promises kept. Within days, the sensor recordings from the Kepler 442 rescue were spreading across the galaxy faster than light itself. Every major news network, military organization, and academic institution wanted copies. The footage was impossible to ignore. 12 human ships dancing through a death trap that had claimed hundreds of vessels over the centuries at the prestigious Centaurian Naval Academy. Instructors played the recordings in stunned silence. Analyze this maneuver, Admiral Kexta told his students, pointing at the screen where a human shuttle spun between two asteroids with millimeters to spare. According to our physics, this should be impossible. The students watched Chen's casual barrel roll around a spinning mountain of rock, listened to his crew joking over the cum channels, and shook their heads in disbelief. "Sir, they're treating it like a training exercise," one cadet whispered. "Exactly," the admiral replied. "That's what makes them dangerous." Across the galaxy, philosophers and sociologists were having heated debates. The peaceful Etherian Council spent weeks discussing the human concept of risking everything for total strangers. "They have no logical reason to help," argued Chief Thinker Velthin. "The Zephyrians offered them nothing. They gained no territory, no resources, no advantage." "Perhaps," replied Elder Morden, "that's exactly why they did it." Meanwhile, the Zephyrians had become humanity's first galactic ambassadors, though they didn't ask for the job. Everywhere they went, other species wanted to hear about the rescue. Captain Veltar found himself giving the same speech over and over. These Deathworlds don't see impossible situations. They see people who need help. The real change came 6 months later, when a synthetic collective mining platform suffered catastrophic failure in a dangerous nebula. Their distress call went out to dozens of species, but it ended with something new. "Please contact the humans." The response came within hours. "This is Captain Essio of the Earth vessel Rising Dawn. We're on our way." Soon, it became a pattern. Cargo ships trapped in gravitational anomalies, research stations lost in dark matter storms, passenger liners with failing life support. The calls always ended the same way. "Please contact the humans." And the humans always answered. It didn't matter if the crisis was in neutral space, hostile territory, or some god-forsaken corner of the galaxy where no sane species would venture. When people needed help, human ships would appear like guardian angels, ready to do the impossible one more time. The galaxy was learning a simple truth. Humans didn't calculate the odds before helping. They just helped.